Happy Sunday afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad you guys are here. Hope you're all getting your tea and your maybe a cup of coffee. Got all your paper and pens ready to go because we're going to be doing some graphing today. I'll give it a minute so we get everybody in here. All right. I see Sharia's already in chat. Thank you so much. My name's Hope. I'm going to be working our way through Unit 3.7. We finished up yesterday, or not yesterday, last week. Let's start again. We finished off 3.1 through 3.6, which is the total cost and more theory of the firm. And now we're going to go into our full putting this together for perfect competition. If you can hear me, go ahead and say so in chat, please. I just need to see how long the lag time is. For those of you watching this on replay, sorry about that. All right, excellent. Yes, welcome everybody. Great. On we go. We're going into 3.7 and we're going to make this work. I hope you guys are excited because this is when econ really and microecon really starts answering some questions, and you can really kind of put some of our basics into the real world situations. And this is kind of CEO or even CFO kind of a head knowledge. This is it. When you're the boss one day and you've got to figure out how much do I need to produce, this is where it kicks in. All right. Hopefully you've got some paper and you're ready to rock and roll, because here we go. So once again, just get out of the way, just to be aware, we've got Discord going as well, but your name might pop up later on, but you're all good. You guys know this. Come see us at Fireable. It's an awesome place to be. We're trying to get you those fives, or at least just do the very best you absolutely can on these tests. You spent a year studying them, you might as well do the best you can on them. So let's go over just a quick overview of what's coming up this week. This is a full week of stuff. We've got Unit 4. We're going to be picking up imperfect competition, which is 3 major market structures that we're going to be looking at. And that's going to be on March 25th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Savings Time. You've got Unit 3 trivia tonight. So we're going to, all of that 3.1 all the way through 3.7. We're going to be doing that tonight at 8 p.m. Again, that's Eastern Time. And as always, Sharia and I are going to be found. We can be found in Discord. Come by, say hi. We're going to pick up some questions as we can. And also, just for tonight, I will not be having the big blank screen Q&A like I usually do, because we've got a lot to cover today. So if you can, just go ahead and throw questions in chat, and Sharia and I are going to pick them up. And if we've got time, in fact, we should have time. At the very end. I'll pick up some questions more directly. But if you've got a question, go ahead and throw it in chat, and I'm happy to answer it as best I can. And if it's going to be answered coming up, well, I'll let you know that too. All right. So tonight, here's what our lineup for today. We're going to be looking at our content review, which is going to be short run production competition. I've got some practice for you guys to work with. And then we're going to look at long run perfect competition. So short run and long run, these are favorite FRQ, and also question number 1 FRQs, the big long ones that pop up. So we're going to nail those down to make sure that you're ready to rock and roll with them. All right, so let's go ahead and pick up where we left off. And that was, we talked about 3.6, we were talking about production, and a lot of you had the question of, wait a minute, where's the MR curve? And I was kind of hesitant to say, well, it's right here, because it really depends. So back in 3.4, we talked about profit maximization, meaning that we want the biggest bang for our buck. I mean, really, this is why we're here. We want to study just enough to get the A on the test and the 5 on the exam. We don't want to spend too much time because we've got other things to do. There's an opportunity cost there. So we want the biggest bang for our buck. We're profit driven and we're profit motivated, and we want the most profit, not necessarily total revenue, the most profit. And the only place we can find that is when my marginal revenue intersects with my marginal cost curve. So MR equals MC. That has two names, as we know. It's profit maximization, but it's also loss minimization. Same concept. If we're going to take an L, we're going to take the smallest L we can. We're going to just kind of like tuck and roll and try to bear it for as long as we possibly can until shutdown. So the question before of where is MR? Where is MR? Depends on your thing called market structure. The market structure, this is a basic economic infrastructure by which an industry or individual industry organizes itself. So they're all unique. Every business is unique, but all businesses are going to fall into four types of market structures: perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. No, not the game, but you'll find there's more games to be made there. So, and I've put this in order in number of sellers. Perfect competition, we have many, theoretically infinite amount of sellers. Monopoly, mono, one. All right, so we go from many sellers to one seller who has control over the entire market. So we're going to first look at perfect competition and see what is the structure of this market and where is that magical marginal revenue in it. So again, with profit maximization or loss minimization, it's got three characteristics besides MR equaling MC. If the price is below ABC, we talked about this last time, the rule doesn't apply because that's shut down. All right, so if it's below ABC, we shut it down, no big deal. All market structures are profit maximized at MRMC. So all four market structures, our eyes go there first. So when you look at a graph, before you panic about it, just go ahead and get your eyes right there to MR equals MC and start there. I love Ender's Game, and there's always that statement of the gate is down, and kind of how the entire team tries to acclimate itself to this new field. Same thing here. The gate is down is MR equals MC. No matter what market structure it is, your eyes go to MR equals MC first. So in perfect competition, we're going to reorder that rule to price equals marginal cost. And you're like, that doesn't sound very important. It is. So P equals MC, but that can only be done in perfect competition. So think P equals MC, and really P equals MR, which equals MC. All right, let's get into it. Characteristics of perfect competition. For some of you, you may know this. Hang with me. I'm sure we're going to review a couple of things that you don't know. So perfect competition, you need to know, are there a lot of sellers? There has to be a lot, like many small firms and businesses, and most of them sell identical products. That's key. So for example, if I poured out a can of one major label's corn, for example, Green Giant corn versus Great Value corn, would you be able to tell the difference? Would you be able to say, oh, this kernel is Great Value, this kernel, more than likely no, it's an identical product. Same thing like green beans, grain, milk, the fact that you can take the milk from different cows and mix it together and sell it as one thing, it tells you this is identical products. So they don't need to advertise much. When was the last time you saw green beans be having a major advertisement? Usually you'll see it on the side of the road out of some truck somewhere. All right, so you don't need to advertise much. There's also low barriers to entry. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Very low barriers to entry. And the crucial one that, again, I'm going to talk about in a second is firms are the price taker. So I've bolded the two things that are really going to give away what type of the structure this is. If there's a lot of small firms and businesses, but if there are low barriers to entry, and if the firm is a price taker, you got a perfectly competitive industry on your hands here. Let's talk about barriers to entry real quick. A barrier to entry, so just think barriers. What is a barrier? It stops something. It funnels something. So a barrier to entry could be government actions. This is regulations. These are government contracts. But mostly in the AP test, they're going to talk about patents. Now, a patent is going to be permission that if you're an inventor, you can apply for a patent, which gives the inventor a right to their own idea and prevents other companies from copying that idea. So you can't, if I invent a instant teleportation device, how cool would that be? But a teleportation device, I stand to make some serious cash off of that. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get a patent on that and make sure that every time somebody is going to use my machine or a prototype of my machine, I get some payment for that, for them using my machine. So government actions are a big one. Sometimes you just have better technology. Companies that have been in the business longer, they're going to have a little bit of advantage just because they have access to tech. You may have, for example, when Amazon decided to jump into the streaming business, they already had a lot set up just because they were already a big company to begin with. They had access to some studios. It was easier for them to enter into the market than for you starting in your garage somewhere. Also, access to raw materials or location. There's a reason why Texas and Venezuela and Middle East and most countries in the Middle East that they are in the oil industry because they're sitting on top of it. They're sitting on top of a natural deposit. Same thing with South Africa. We've got some of the diamond mines there. We've got and also just rare earth materials in general in Africa and in northern China. That you have all these this access to these raw materials. It means that to get them, I have to pay another country for them if I don't live there. So if you have access to, if you're sitting on this, if you own that land, well, then all of a sudden you're going to have better access to some things. So corn, on the other hand, can be grown all over the place. So if everybody has access to it, well, welcome to a perfectly competitive system here. Now let's go back to long run in a second in 3.5 for a second when we were talking about economies of scale. The bigger the company, the easier to cut the cost quickly per unit using mass production techniques. Meaning that if you are already a big company like an Amazon going into streaming, you may be going into a new section of industry, but you're already big and you already have economies of scale going. You're buying things in bulk. So if you buy a lot of it at one shot, it's going to be way cheaper than if you decide to buy things one at a time. So think of that, and it should get clear. So those are barriers to entry. So if it's low barrier to entry, so perfect competition, we're talking about there's not a whole lot of regulation or there's not a lot of contracts. The government's not really interfering a ton here. You may not need the technology. You may not need access to raw materials or a certain location, and you may not need economies of scale. So I live in the southern United States, and if you want to sell corn, you take your truck and you park it next to the road. You put a sign that says corn, and people come to your truck. So it's really easy to enter and exit the market, literally and figuratively, because you're just driving off the road and parking for a second as people come over. So the big one here is that I'm going to show you how this works. Is that when we say that the firms are the price taker. Now remember, firms, you're going to see this in the AP test. It might say firms, it might mean business. We're talking about an individual company within a greater industry. This is micro. We're not talking about nations. That's macro. So with micro, we're talking about individual businesses. So sellers have no control over price. All right. Well, how did we get that? Well, to the graphing. Here we go. Okay. So let's go back to supply and demand. So if you're, please graph along with me here. So go ahead and throw up your axes. So you've got price on the vertical, quantity on the horizontal. You've got your upward sloping supply curve, your downward sloping demand curve, D for down. And where they meet, you've got equilibrium. Yay. So in this situation, because I like 5. So in this industry, in the corn industry, it's going to be $5. We have equilibrium at $5 and 400 billion bushels of corn. I'll throw in a B for a billion there for you. So we got 400 billion bushels of corn being sold for $5 a bushel. In the chat, go ahead and throw in an answer real quick. Why won't an individual firm sell above $5 or sell below? Another way to think of that is, why is a firm going to just sell, if you've got many sellers going on and a lot of people in here in a lot of different in a lot of different business in this industry, why aren't they going to charge more than $5 or less than $5? I'll give you about 30 seconds. Good job. All right. Anybody else want to join in? I love how you guys are taking the hint. Excellent. All right. Most of you, the two of you that answered, thank you very much. I want you to think, if you were to sell, if you're looking at an entire row of trucks, all of them are selling corn for $5. Five. And then you got one guy or girl, we're gender inclusive here, but you got one person who is selling them for $6. What's going to happen? Nobody's going to go to his truck. Nobody's going to go there. Instead, they'll go to their competitors. It's a perfect substitute, as we would say. That if you've got somebody selling corn on the next truck over for $5, nobody's going to buy the $6. So this guy is going to get left with a truck full of corn and nothing. So he's obviously not going to charge $6. So instead, he's going to drop it down to $5. Does he want to? No, he wants to charge the $6. He really does. But he can't because nobody would buy it. Now, what happens if somebody goes, oh, how about $4? Well, $4, when every other truck says $5, if it says $4 or $3 to it, he's going to sell out real quick, but he won't make the profit he would have. Remember, we're profit motivated. So it makes way more sense to charge at $5 if everybody's charging at $5, because then you get the profit. All right. So I want you to think, if nobody's charging above $5 and nobody's charging below $5, think of the individual industry. And in perfect competition, you're going to need two graphs. I'm like, what? Two. You need one for the industry, and you're going to need one right next to it for the individual company or the firm or business. So if this is the corn industry, I've got Amazing Corn Company on the other side. But notice how they're right next to each other with a dotted line that becomes a solid line on the industry. And this is going to show us the price taker, that whatever the price is that's determined by the market, that the individual firm has to take that price. So the price is determined by market. Now remember, is it a big Congress over there voting the price shall be? No, it's dollars. It's dollar sovereignty here. That the market has decided, that invisible hand has decided. So we have dotted line all the way over to the individual firm, and that's when it makes that solid line. It cannot dip. The price becomes, ready? The price becomes the demand curve. Price becomes the demand curve. And notice it's making that little, it looks like almost an upside down F or an incomplete E. Hey, you've seen that before. That's a perfectly elastic line. Hey, look at you, Unit 2. So this is a perfectly elastic line. This is one of the reasons we talk about it. So our demand curve, perfectly elastic, meaning that no matter what quantity it is, it's got to be this price. So if the firm's price is $5, I want you to think, what is the average revenue and what's the marginal revenue? Average revenue, we take the quantity and we divide it by the price. Okay. So if I'm making, for example, if I'm making I take the price divided by the quantity. So if I'm making one unit for 1 unit at $5, well, price divided by quantity, $5. Okay, well, what about 2 units? If it's average, well, 2 units, I got $10 there, but divided by 2, $5. Oh, wait, that sounds interesting. So if I take 3 units, well, that's going to be $15. So $15 divided by 3, that's another $5. Oh, no, AR is the same. Okay, but what about marginal revenue, where we get a change in price over the change in quantity? So if I have a change in price, which is nothing, all right? So if I go from $5 to $5 and I go from 1 to 1, there's no change. This is, guys, catch this. This is big. Your MR and your AR are both $5. They're also perfectly elastic. They're not changing because the firm is a price taker. That price stays the same because it's perfectly elastic. It means your demand's the same, and guess what? It means your marginal revenue and your average revenue are also the same. So I want you to introduce you to a fun little guy. All right. Oh, sorry. So in only a perfectly competitive market structure, you're missing it. I'm gesturing here. But in only a perfectly competitive market structure, price equals demand equals MR equals AR, which is really tricky to remember when you're under pressure of the test. So I've given you a really stupid drawing to remember this. I want you to think about Mr. Darp taking a nap. So Mr. Darp, he's perfectly elastic here, but Mr. Darp, MR equals D equals AR equals P. So really easy way to remember that. But that is going to help you figure out a lot of things, because when perfect competition, they like to leave out some information. They'll give you the price and you're like, but what's my MR? Well, if they gave you the price, then you've got your MR. It's your price. Will it be like that for everything? No. You've got other market structures out there, but it will be like that for perfect competition. So we've got our AR. Exciting. So now we've got our AR. Where do our eyes go first? Where MR equals MC. So let's throw in our cost curves. Now, again, you will see on the AP test, I shouldn't say that. You probably will not see the average fixed cost on this kind of curve. They don't have to, and I'm going to show you why. However, they do love throwing MC, ATC at least, and usually you'll get an AVC thrown in there as well. So just so you know, and we're going to play a little bit with that practice as well. So where do our eyes go first? MR equals MC. So at $5, take a peek at where MR, which is Mr. Darp takes a nap. So D equals MR equals P equals AR. So where you see that demand curve connect with the marginal cost curve, boom, drop the anchor on your little boat. All right. Drop that anchor directly down, and that's the units where you need to produce at. Okay. Now, don't worry if this is a little over your head for a second. It shouldn't be. But I want you to think of everything above the marginal cost curve, like even the curve part, everything above there. Remember, marginal cost means the cost as I move per unit. Everything above is going to be available profit. Now, we're careful, but it's available profit, whereas below is opportunity cost. You probably won't need that for the AP test, but it's always fun to think about, like, okay, what is that curve? What does that curve actually represent? What you're going to need for the AP test, though, is you need to know when to stop producing. Because remember, you're going to be tempted to push it to the 6. You want to go to 6 units, but at that point, at 6 units, well, then you're above your marginal revenue line. Your MC is now more than your MR. And don't do that. No, that's putting too much effort into it. So we want to be careful with that. So at this point, I want you to take a guess. Do you think this company is Amazing Corn Company? Do you think they're making a profit or a loss right now? Or are they breaking even? Give it a guess. All right, take a peek at that, where that price line is. The price line is above the ATC, the average total cost, which means it's probably making a profit. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to zoom in here. So just imagine that the industry is over to the side, but I'm just going to really zoom in on just the firm for a second. The other graph is still there. It's still determining profit. Good, you got it. All right, so go ahead, and I want you to take a look at this. Now, again, remember the industry is over to the left of Amazing Company Core. It's just that I wanted you to see it, and it's really hard to do this in Google Slides, but it's okay. I want you to take a second, and we're going to do a little practice here. How much is the firm making by producing 5 units at $5? Try to figure out what the total revenue is, the total cost, and the total profit. And I'm going to give you 30 seconds. If you're on replay, go ahead and pause here and we'll check back in with you. All right, let's go ahead and work our way through it. So let's talk about total revenue. How do I figure out total revenue? I take my price times my quantity. So there we go. All right, I take my price times my quantity. So for those of you who are not looking ahead in the slides, you can kind of work with us for a second here. So total revenue, price times quantity. So 5 times 5 equals $25. $5 times 5 units, $25. That entire square there that's shaded in purple, that's your total revenue. And you got it. Now let's talk about total cost. Total cost. Now there's a couple ways. Remember, there's a couple ways to find total cost. So I am given, in this situation, I'm given the ATC, which is at 5 units. I am producing at, see where our dotted line is? So where the dotted line crosses the ATC, at that moment, at that production, that's where that cost is. So we're going to say that's $3. So if the ATC is $3, I'm going to take ATC, multiply it by the 5 units, I'm going to get $15. So, okay, I got, for each unit, or my total cost for producing those 5 units, $15. Each unit is going to cost $3. All right. Now, let's talk profit. Now, there's 2 ways you can figure this out, and it's really handy to know both. So you've got 2 ways. First, with all the information I've got, the easiest way is just to think total revenue minus total cost equals total profit. By the way, you might see profit as the pi sign. They do this to distinguish it from total production. So if you see P, that's your profit, okay? So if we've got, so if it's total revenue at $25 minus the total cost at $15, it's gonna equal $10, all right? So my total profit is $10 for at 5 units. Or another way I can do this is I take the price at that unit. So my $5 minus the $3 equals the $2. And then I take that $2 profit per unit and multiply it by the amount of units I'm creating, the quantity of units. So $2 times 5 equals $10. Whatever is easiest for you to wrap your head around at that point, do it. All right, with AP. Just what some my students find some roots easier to think about than others. Know both so you can go back and forth. But I love the cheering section going on in the comments. You guys just make me happy. This is like we're micro fam here. All right, so just make sure you know both. All right, what about here? So go ahead and take 30 seconds and try now. So the ATC has moved, but remember, where do your eyes go first? All right, let's walk through it. So units produced. How many units should I make? Well, guess what, guys? Just because the ATC has moved doesn't mean that my MR has moved. My marginal revenue is still there, and my marginal cost is still there. So it's just that my average total cost has happened. Now, in what situation would we have just the ATC moving? All right, if we just have the ATC moving, usually that's your sign that a lump sum tax has been put in, meaning that somebody has charged a significant amount of money that has raised the AFC and the ATC, but not necessarily the ABC. We'll get to that. All right, so here we go. So yes, thank you. I'm glad you figured that one out. But yes, you have your AVC there. So if you see the blue line is AVC, my apologies, it wasn't that clear. So it's still 5 units because the MR hasn't changed. All right, so let's go with total revenue then. So we've got our purple happening. Purple thing hasn't changed. It's still 5 times 5 is 25. Okay, so then, and this is, I see, it was not as clear. I wish it were. What about total cost? So if it's $7 is my total cost, or my average total cost at 5 units, and my apologies, it wasn't as clear as it could have been. Again, it's hard with Google Slides, but I'll get better. Practice makes permanent. So at $7 times 5 units, total cost is $35. So what is my total profit or loss? Well, 2 ways you can figure this out. You can either sort it out. It's that part above the price, by the way. So TR minus the TC, or total revenue, minus the total cost equals our total profit, and we're in this case a loss. So $25 minus the $35 equals that $10 loss. So there we go. And then yes, and Sharia is walking you through the other way of doing this too. Know both, but just if it feels like, oh, I don't really, I'm just, if my strength is one direction, and you can, not the band, but if my strength is one of those pathways, try it first. If you don't have all your parts, you have a backup ready to go. All right, so what happens if people stop liking corn for whatever reason? So so we're going back to our original situation, but is Amazing Corn Company still going to make a profit if people stop liking corn? Okay, now I'm going to take this in a couple of steps. So what happens if people stop liking corn? Think unit 2, when we have that change in taste and preferences. Guys, that's your demand curve. That is a shift on the demand curve. The demand curve is going to shift to the left because of taste and preferences, which is going to drive the price down, the industry price down, as well as the quantity. The quantity will decrease as well. So we go from 400 units at $5 to it. Yeah, you are correct that it's going to shift the demand curve to the left, which changes the price. So the price must lower for this new industry to happen. But then, if the P has changed, the D has changed. So P, D, AR, and that means your MR has changed. So now we are going to have a decrease in a demand curve. And do you think your business is going to enjoy that? No, but they don't have a say. They're a price taker. So let's go ahead and switch this around and let's try something a little different here. So how much is the firm making at $3 now? So take a peek at the units produced, the total revenue, total cost. Is there a total profit or a loss? And again, I'll give you about 20 seconds this time, just so I can stay on topic here. Because you are going to have some questions later on, and that's okay. All right, so let's see. How many units should be produced? Now, this one's a little tough to see, I know. But where do our eyes go first? MR equals MC. So, what happened? Notice where AVC is. The price is below AVC. Now, you should have had that memory back in the day of when we were talking about what are some things to hold. If your price is below AVC, you are producing nothing. Do not produce a thing. This is like, why in the world would a water park be open in the middle of the winter? They wouldn't. They would shut down. So same thing here. If you're not going to make, if you are to the point, think AVC is paying off your people. This is paying off your registers. You're paying for your frozen chicken fingers if you've got the food truck. That you are paying for things that are variable cost. So you're going to shut that down. You're only going to pay your rent. You're only going to be paying those fixed costs. So we're going to shut down because our price is below AVC. We're also, what's our total revenue? Nothing, because I'm shut down. I am not even, notice how there's not even a square here. All right, so not even a square here because it is a shutdown moment. Now, what about total cost? Now, this one could be, you can figure this out a couple of different ways, and I've posted them for you there. All right, you're only looking for FC. And the reason I use the MR where I would normally put it is just, you can actually go from any of the units to do it. I am just trying to find the distance between the AVC and the ATC. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to find the average fixed cost. Because I got to find out what the fixed cost is. If my total cost is only fixed cost, I got to figure it out. So if you just grab any of those quantities, it'll work. So to measure it out, especially if they don't give you AFC, you've got to find it. So AFC, I know that AFC times Q is going to equal fixed cost. I also know that ATC minus the AVC is going to equal my AFC. So at 4 units, well, I already know that it's $6 for my ATC and $4 for my AVC. So the distance between the two should be my AFC, which is $2. So if my AFC is $2 times the quantity at that point, which would be $8, that's my fixed cost. The thing is, that's going to be my fixed cost no matter what the quantity is because it's fixed. It's a perfectly elastic curve on the total cost curve. So what's going to be my total profit or loss? It's negative $8 because it's due to shutdown. So this is where fixed cost due to shutdown. All right, and this is why it's a little bit easier for me to talk about shutdown. It's way easier than doing it at 3.6 because of the market structure. I can tell you where MR is. I can tell you where is MR in regards to production and how to find that price because you can't find it otherwise. All right, so what would happen if I taxed corn? I'll go back. So what would happen if I taxed corn? Well, remember what tax is. Tax is going to factor in as an action of the government. Now, watch out, guys. This is go back to Unit 2 review if you need to on this one. And I expect a few bits of confusion, and that's okay because this is a tricky bit. All right. Taxes, remember, this is the government artificially raising prices because they want to diminish quantity or they're going for revenue if it's an inelastic good. A tax is going to be action of the government. So this is stage. Yes. Sorry, picking up a question. Yes. The only reason your FCs, your fixed costs, your rent, they don't change with production. You always have to pay it just to stay in business. So that's cost is going to be in there. I just showed you kind of a quick way of figuring out what it is if they don't give you AFC. Sometimes they will, which would be great. Speeds up the process if they give it to you. So with a tax, sorry about that. Let me go back to a tax here. Taxes will alter quantity, which is going to indirectly affect demand, but the tax happens to the producer. That is the A of stage. Okay, this is actions of government, so it's going to shift supply. So supply shifts to the left, and I always like to put tax just so I can remember it. It's not necessarily an S2 because there's a third party here. This is not your normal issue. So with that tax moving to the left, we have a new equilibrium bit, okay, that I've forgotten to drop that down to 300. My apologies. But we have now moved not just the demand curve. All right. So, and I've left at it because it was getting way too crazy over there. But notice what happens. The price, even though it's a $1 unit tax, the tax is vertical. So I go from $5 to $6. But because the demand curve is downward sloping, as is the supply curve, not unless it's perfectly inelastic, that price has to be shared. The producer's going to have to eat some of that tax. We talked about that with a little bit with Unit 2, and guess what? It's coming back for Unit 6 too. So the price has to increase. So the price increases, and what happens to the firm itself? So I'm going to zoom in on the firm. You're like, I'm seeing in double. Okay, sorry about that. but hopefully it's somewhat clear what's going to happen. If it is a per unit tax, if it's a lump sum tax, we're only going to see a shift in the AFC and the ATC, or AFC first, and thereby it's going to change to the ATC. With a per unit tax, you are also going to see a shift with the AVC. All right, with the average variable cost, which means that the average total cost is going to move too, and it's going to move the marginal cost curve. All right, so what's going to happen now? We've got the price going up, where the price is increasing, great, but that means that there's now a third party that's kind of picking up, the government is taking that tax, which means the costs are going to rise a little bit. So, but look at where the ATC is. Or first off, eyes go where? MR versus MC. So we're going to look at D2, which is going to be at the $5.50 mark, and look at that new the new marginal cost curve, or the new supply curve, which is going to be your S plus tax. It's going to push production to the left. We're going to go from 5 units to 4 units. And is there still distance between the ATC and that meeting point of the MR and the new MR and MC? The answer is yes. There's still profit to be made, but they're just going to be making less of it. All right. And one of the reasons they do this is because they backed off on production. This is one of the reasons why you're going to see governments taxing things that we would call them vices back in the day, like alcohol, tobacco, things that they would rather people not have, or people would not have in large consumption. So what does the government do to artificially decrease the supply of it, and thereby kind of cut back on the demand? They're going to be using those taxes. And this is what you can see at the industry level. If they put a tax on corn, it's going to shift the production of corn to the left. All right, so if we go back to our original situation, now I want you to think, what's going to happen? Those are all short-run situations. And remember, you're like, short run, what is short run? Short run means there's something fixed. There's something, one of the factors of production hasn't changed. For example, I may be in a factory and I'm in a year-long contract. Well, after the year-long contract is up, then I can kind of think about, what do I want to do with my business? But I can't for the time being. For that year, I'm stuck in it. So my short run in that moment is going to be just that year. However, it's not time-based, because everyone's short run is a little different, because everyone's contracts are different, industries are different. So just think short run. Short run is just when something can't change. I have to kind of stick it out with this one oven in my bakery. Well, here, let's go back to if we look at our original situation where we've got ATC below the price. So for my individual firm, my price is set. Now, this is a really interesting concept that if you can try to wrap your head around it. But the industry has many, many, many different sellers. They're selling identical products. And this is where some students kind of lose it. They're going to have the same products, but that doesn't mean they're all the same. They are doing different things to sell those products. For example, their cost, the average total cost curve, may be very different from Maize and Corn Company from Shucks-a-Lot Corn. All right. So you've got different corn companies have different costs. So just kind of get that in your head. Be like, okay, so we're just looking at Maize and Corn Company, which is one tiny, tiny, tiny little business in the dead center of equilibrium in the corn industry. So at this point, a Maize and Corn Company is making a profit. But what happens to profits? Okay, so you get to see my amazing drawing skills. They're not that amazing, but I thought he was pretty cute. All right. So in both situations of losses or profit and loss, I want you to just think, eep, it's an eel. All right. The idea is that if there is profit to be made, I don't care. I live in Florida and we have ants, and a lot of them. So if you put a Jolly Rancher or just a candy on the driveway or on a road, you're going to get a swarm of ants, and they're going to eat that candy until it is absolutely gone. And you'll probably find one ant licking the side of the road or something. They are not leaving until everything is gone. Profit is like that candy on the road. that if you put profit out there, I don't care if it's the littlest bit of profit out there, you will have competitors. So people are going to jump in. If there is money to be made, and just think, this is human nature. This is nothing new. If there's money to be made, people are jumping in. So in that situation, EAP, if there is profit in the short run, you are going to have more sellers that jump in. Oh, what does selling do? Oh, more sellers, S of stage. It's going to shift your supply curve to the right, which drops the price, which is going to drop demand, which is going to the demand curve of the single industry, which drops the MR. So it's going to eat away at those profits until there is no profit left. Well, what about losses? Well, we just saw what happens if you have no control over the price and the losses go below your ABC. Uh-oh, you got to shut down. And so exit is going to, companies exiting will eliminate the loss. So entrance into the especially with low barriers to entry, guys, anybody can enter this industry. So if I'm selling corn by the side of the road and I'm making money off of it, well, tomorrow I'm going to have a bunch of trucks that are going to compete with me, and we're all going to have to drop our prices. Entrance eliminates profits. Exit, oh, got to shut down because my costs are too high and the prices drop below my ABC. Exit will eliminate the losses. So in the long run, for perfect competition, so in our situation, there was still profit being made, which means that we're going to have more corn companies that jump in. So what happens in the long run? In the long run, sorry, I meant to do this before. This is a constant cost industry. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So in the long run, if I've got more sellers that jump in, the price gets driven down in order to be competitive. It's still above my ABC, but for all industries, in the long run, just for perfect competition, in the long run, you will have zero economic profit. Now, careful, economic profit does not equal accounting profit, because remember, economic profit includes all the opportunity costs. Economic profit means that people are still making a profit. There's a normal or accounting profit to be made, but I didn't leave anything on the table. I left it all on the field, so to speak, that we've given it all we've got. At the end of the day, you are going to have this magical moment that only exists in perfect competition. All right. This is this magical moment where price equals the marginal cost, which equals the minimum ATC. Because remember, where does ATC and marginal cost hit? At the very bottom of that curve, at the minimum of that curve. So this is in the long run, this is what we would call long run perfect competition there. In the long run, there's no economic profit. There's zero economic profit. Your price equals your MC, which means price equals MR, if you want to go technical with me. Price equals MR equals MC, which equals the minimum ATC. That is yay, wonderful moment, because here's why. Here's the magic. Ready? This is like stuff that gets the economist so happy. All right. We'll remember I was telling you about how the economist's house and the economist's kitchen, the cupboards are empty because we buy just enough ingredients to make our meal. Everyone gets fed. Nobody's hungry. We dust our hands off and there's nothing left over. So it's perfectly efficient. Perfect competition is perfectly efficient. So why we call it perfect? Okay, there's nothing left over. First off, there's no deadweight loss if you look at that industry, if you remember your unit 2, but also it's productively efficient. Now, this does pop up, so know the difference. Also, we'll talk about this with FRQ practice. A lot of times you don't need to use words when you can use formulas. So if you have explain why this industry is productively efficient, P equals a minimum ATC, bada bing, done. All right. We like to be efficient with our words as well. Now, 2 types of efficiencies that you need to know that I didn't hammer out in unit 1, but you wouldn't have understood it anyway at that point, but you see it now, is productive efficiency, price equals the minimum ATC. And I'm going to say price because you're like, well, why not MR? Because the MR is not always the price. That's just in perfect competition. It's just so beautiful. All right, so productive efficiency, price equals the minimum ATC. allocative efficiency, meaning productive efficiency is, am I making this for the lowest cost I possibly can to profit maximize? All right, so your minimum ATC is this, am I at the lowest possible total cost? And the answer is, I hope so. Allocative efficiency, am I producing the right mix? Am I producing at the right moment? And that's going to be P equals MC, which naturally, if P equals MR, well, then it's always going to be allocatively efficient. All right. In the long run, in the short run, perfect competition is always going to be allocatively efficient, but not always productively efficient, because you might have economic profit or loss. But in the long run, perfect competition is both productively efficient and allocatively efficient. So they're both, we've got both in perfect competition. And the word you're going to see is breaks even. So every business breaks even, meaning no economic profit. Again, they have a normal profit, but they don't necessarily have the same costs. So this is as we go into increasing costs and different types of things, this will make a little bit more sense. But while they're going to share a price, so while they're locked in, they're the price taker, there are some firms that are going to be more efficient than others. By that, I mean, some of them they're already at break even in the short run. So if the price drops anymore, they're going to start taking an L. And if the price drops more than that, then they may actually have to shut down, because they already have they're already at inefficiency or productive inefficiency. They might be too much. For example, they might have too much of a profit, which is meaning more economic profit. And that economic profit is a problem, because that means you've got opportunities that you could be taking. You're not using your opportunities to their fullest. You haven't pressed all of the juice out of the orange yet. So you're going to want to, you want to make sure that your economic profit's going to equal zero. All right, now I'm going to take a second here. And I know this looks a little confusing, but it's actually simple. So at the beginning of this, we talked about short run cost and short run perfect competition in the short run. And that means the industry is doing something funky. And then if the industry is doing something, it's going to affect the individual industry. All right, not a big deal, right? Then we talked about going from short run to long run. And if we've got a profit in the short run, well, more sellers are going to enter in the long run and drive until there is no profit, until there's no economic profit, meaning that there's no incentive to produce more or to produce less. There's just, you're locked in. If a company's got a loss, if they have a loss, they might try to wait it out, just pay for fixed cost. They may try to wait it out and produce until the price drops below their ATC, their AVC, and then they shut down. What I want you to think about is, we've talked about short run to short run. Now we talked about short run to long run, and now I want to talk about long run to long run. That's going to make this a little easier for you to think about. This is not talking about short run. Now, in our situation, if we were going long run to long run, I want you to think producers are going to enter into a market in the long run that's not going to drive up the cost for the industry. So for example, if I've got Drake and Cardi B both making music, Cardi B making a new album does not make Drake's new album more expensive to produce. That it can be shared. It's digital. It's not going to increase costs. So it is what we call a constant cost industry. That if it's even corn, for that matter, producing more corn doesn't necessarily drive up the cost, maybe environmental cost, but maybe drive up the cost of the entire industry. Oil does. And really, your big industries right now, most of them have increasing costs. Now, with constant costs, notice that the price, long run, that long run market supply price is going to stay the same. Even though I'm going to be producing more of it, if I go from 400 units to 600 units, I'm still the same here. But in an increasing cost situation, this is when to move from 400 units to 800 units or billions barrels in the oil industry, that means I only have finite amount of oil in there. And I've got to get permits to dig more. For example, if you wanted to, if you don't want to do some pipelines, remember, to get more oil means I have to kind of go into places that may not be the best drilling sites ever. All right, that I may have to go into different areas. I may have to find a substitute for it. I may have to pass it. I may have to delay for a law. But it's just with the oil industry, if I am going to produce more, there is more of a cost. It may be environmental cost. It may be a rental cost. It may be even military in order to protect those oil fields. So to get more oil out, I have to get a new drill to put out in the Gulf of Mexico. I have to repair a new pipe, a new pipeway. I have to find a new place to drill. I have to allow fracking. I have to do something that is going to drive up the cost. So going from long run to long run in an increasing cost, that long run market supply is going to be an upward incline. It popped up, Sharia. The reason I put this in there is it popped up as an FRQ, and because I don't take a lot of time on it. It's just one of those. Just you need to know it because my kids got thrown for a curveball on that one because I did not stress that enough. But you will know it, or at least be familiar with it. So just know that if we're talking about constant cost, which most of our situations will be, except for that one weird FRQ that popped up. Yes, they will. Yeah, the FRQ was the big curveball in that year. So just making sure that we're going to cover that. All right, so that's long run. And then you've got the long run market supply is in constant cost, stays the same. It's upward sloping in with increasing cost. And that's really all you need to know about it. All right, now we've got some time. All right, so go ahead and throw in some chat questions. Would love to, yes, this is a lot. So if you feel overwhelmed, it's okay. And now you can see why I split this unit up. Can you imagine doing all of Unit 3 at once? Yikes. All right, while you guys are there, I'm going to go back to our original situation. And so if you need some help, or you need some, let's see, let's go back over here. Hello, Mr. Darp. Anytime. Oh, great question. All right, so let's go ahead. We got some. Why does demand curve shifting change the MR? Okay, so because actually, I can go back to Mr. Darp. Oh, okay. Oh, great. I got questions. Excellent. All right. So remember Mr. Darp. So this is Tiana. So if demand curve shifts, or the firm's demand curve, that's D. So D in perfect competition equals your price. But what's really handy is that it also equals our marginal revenue. So if our demand shifts, if it decreases, that means my marginal revenue decreases right along with it because it's perfectly elastic. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Quick question for Unit 3. In general, when do we need to shut down? Anytime the price is either at AVC or below AVC. And the reason I say at AVC is because you would have just as much cost of producing as you would shutting down. And which would you rather do? If you knew you were going to make a 95 on a test, regardless of if you studied or not, would you study? And the answer is you probably would sit on your couch and watch Netflix. So if that's human mentality, then even if P is anywhere at that ABC line, more than likely you're going to shut down. If it's below it, definitely. All right, and let's see. What's the difference between productive and allocative efficiency? For what you need to know is that there's a different formula, number one. But for productive efficiency, am I producing at the lowest possible cost? Like, am I driving those costs down? Because if my costs are lower, my profit's higher and I'm profit motivated. So am I producing at most efficient levels of production? Am I bringing those costs down as much as possible? Am I squeezing as much profit out of that as I possibly can? That's productive. So in that situation, price is going to equal the minimum ATC. So if price is equaling your minimum ATC, ooh, bada bang, you got it. Because that means that I am going to hit that cost curve at the lowest possible moment. And it means I have used up everything. The productive or allocative efficiency is, am I making the right mix of things? Is there going to be debt weight loss? Is going to be the question. So am I making the right mix or the right amount of things or the right amount or the correct amount of units to profit maximize? Hence, P equals marginal cost. Or in perfect competition, your P equals your MR, which equals your MC. So you're already there anyway. So always you will have perfect competition will always be allocatively efficient, but sometimes it's not so much. It can be productively inefficient in the short run, but it will come back to productive efficiency in the long run. All right. Is there a way we can tell apart graphs from long run to long run in comparison to tax to the government? I'm not sure if they look similar. They're going to look very similar. That's a great question. I put the long run to long run at the very end because it has popped up in the past, and it's always popped up in places where my students can get fooled by it. With tax, it's going to just think short run, but so think tax in the short run, but think what's going to happen in the long run. So if there's a tax and you drive up the prices, but you're still making a profit, well, what's going to happen in the long run? In the long run, if there's still a profit, you're still going to have sellers that are going to enter into the market because there's still profit to be made with or without the tax. And so that's going to push things, it's going to push things back to the right. And you are going to end up with no economic profit. Yes, and Sharia is correct on that one. So if there is a situation, the big thing you need to know for tax is that the MC and the AVC are involved. That if it's just a lump sum, which is why it typically is like a question 1 or a question 2, because it usually involves every other unit there, especially when we get into unit 6. With the AVC, with a per unit tax, you're going to have the AVC activated, which is going to change the marginal cost curve, because remember, marginal cost becomes a supply after the minimum of AVC, and which is going to affect the ATC. So everything shifts. If it's just a lump sum tax, then a lump sum means all at once. Well, a lump sum tax is only going to change one of the data points. It won't change all of them like a per unit tax will. So if it's just changing one data point, it won't shift the line. So the only thing that's going to change is your fixed cost and your average total cost. So if your fixed cost and your fixed cost plus your variable cost equals total cost, so your FC is going to equal your TC, is going to change your TC, but the VC not changing. So if same thing goes with AFC. If your AFC changes, then your ATC is going to change, but your AVC won't change, which means that your MC is going to stay where it is. Yes, and Sharia is right on it. Okay. Wow, you guys, we made it through 3.7. How exciting. All right, I can't wait for you guys to join me as we go through Unit 4. So we've looked at perfect competition, and now, my friends, it is time to look at imperfect competition. So we are going to be taking those on. I'm just kind of flipping through this real quick. We're going to be flipping through imperfect competition coming up on the 25th. Wow, guys, imperfect competition, get ready to graph some more because that MR is going to be changing. All right, so I'm going to be on Discord for a little bit. Sharia's on Discord all the time. I'm there a lot. But you've got trivia tonight at 8 p.m. I hope this clarified a few things for you. If not, come back into Discord. We're happy to help you out. And have a great week. And so I'll see you soon. This is a micro week. So thanks everybody for coming, and I'll talk to you guys later.